Our next guest recently became the Vice President of Northern Development and Indigenous Relationships with ATCO and is now responsible for the entire electricity division for the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, while also continuing his critical work to build and strengthen his relationships with communities across the North. He's a member of the Wolf Clan and a council member for the Ta'an Council. He's a son of former Grand Chief Ruth Massie, and we're proud to welcome him to the 50th Anniversary Speaker Series, Jay Massie. Good afternoon, Jay. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Don Jay. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Yes, it's great to have you on the show. And for the listeners and the viewers, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and the role that you play with ATCO? Thank you.
You covered most of it already. Now I got to do it, right? Jay Massie, Ta'an Council citizen, Wolf Clan. Yes, and my mother was Grand Chief previously and Chief of our First Nation, and with ATCO. So I started with ATCO here. Been working here my whole life for ATCO, 34 years. And lineman by trade, background started with that, and moved through the management, and now working with teams here in the Yukon and into the NWT.
Awesome stuff. And there's been so many historic moments over the course of our last 50 years. How important is this moment for you, not only as an individual that has grown up in a leadership family, let alone the role that you play within the company today? 50 years, how important is this moment for you?
Yeah, I should start with that. I'm honored to be here today. Like, this is such a momentous day, the momentous occasion 50 years ago, and for me to be able to sit up here, be invited to sit up here and share whatever story. I am honored to be here. It's such a big one, and when I look back at the last 50 years, like we talked the other day, right? I started reading Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow again. And there's so many amazing parts to it that you can really frame today with, and also see the path in this last 50 years of how long it took to get here.
For sure. And recently we were both in Arctic Winter Games in Fort McMurray, and you had the pleasure of not only introducing yourself, but also on behalf of the company. How important is it now in today's world to see our own people at the highest level when it comes to executive roles in major companies such as ATCO, let alone in the business communities today?
Yeah, I think it's terribly important. It's something that the youth, hopefully, we can be looked at as role models for the youth of today to see that, you know what, we can get to these higher roles. We can do this. We can be a part of business, the economy, part of moving the Yukon and the North forward. It's completely possible for us. When I think about that, it's terribly important, but also we have that responsibility to mentor the youth also.
I agree with that 100%. And just in regards to, and equally as important, how important is it for big companies such as ATCO's, the Northwest Tells, Yukon Energies to also reflect on regards to hiring Indigenous people, First Nation people into these important roles?
Terribly important. It's something that really needs to be in the fabric of business. And, I could speak from ATCO's point of view, of course. The TRC calls to action number 92, business and reconciliation. That is something that really that ATCO has taken to heart. It's something that I'm very proud to have a big part in with the ATCO group, to ensure that across the organization, that the whole point of economic reconciliation is being factored into their business. So it's terribly important for the big businesses, terribly important for the Crown Corps, Yukon Energy, as well as Northwest Tel. I know they've done a lot of good things, been working hard on it, and I think there's it needs to. A lot of good work has been done. Continued focus needs to be there, though.
For sure. And today's theme is obviously economic development. What are some, from your own personal perspective, some of the key indicators that First Nation businesses are doing well today in today's economy versus going back, pre-73, if you will, and prior to now? What are the key indicators that you see that we're doing all right in regards to the vision of Together Today for our children tomorrow?
Well, we're doing all right. We're still progressing and moving forward. I think with most of the First Nations, like we see that they have dev corps that are stood up. I know ours is quite active. Kwalin is quite active. So I see that economic development through the dev corps has been a big step forward. They're doing fairly well. There's lots of good work going on out there. And those renewable projects that we're doing in the communities, that's working with the dev corps of the First Nations to stand those projects up. Doing a lot of good work out there. Still a lot of good things that to come, though.
Yes, and you're in the energy field in the sense of that. And recently at the leadership table, we've now instructed the Chiefs Committee on Energy. From your perspective, how important is the energy discussion to all Yukoners, let alone First Nation traditional territories, in the years to come, if you will?
Very, very important. Very important nowadays, especially to me. Really, the Yukon's at a point where, we've had. We're hydro-based, so very renewable power to date in the Yukon, and with the two big, the Ajac hydro dam and the Whitehorse hydro dam were put in place in the 50s. They've served us very well. We're over 90% renewable power. There's very few jurisdictions in Canada that can say that. So we've done very well with that. Today, with the growth in population in the Yukon, we need more power. Like there's more energy needs. We're a growing population, and our energy needs are growing. We are a consumptive society, so we need electricity. We need more power. So that next step forward is a big one, and this is a pretty important time. You hear the government, Canadian government, Yukon government, and Yukon Energy are partnering to hook into Atlan. Atlan Hydro is expanding, so more renewable power connecting into our grid. That's just, in my mind, a fairly interim step. We are going to need more power at some point, and for the First Nation governments to be part of that, they have to be. That is key of that next step forward of where are we getting our energy from and how are we going to use it.
For sure. And the government, for instance, has put a lot of objectives in place, not only to commit to going to more greener energy, let alone to the electricity world. And cities, even big as New York, have put goals of being electric driven by 2030. How much of a reality here in the territory is it going to be for us to not only move from the diesel generation world and the fossil fuels, if you will, into a greener source? And then we could look at, many commitments that are made. Are we going to make those benchmarks as being prescribed today, from your perspective? And if that might get you into trouble, I apologize for that question.
No, you don't. We're well on our way, and I'm quite positive that we are going to make those commitments. The reduction by 30% by 2030, which isn't very far away. The one thing in the Yukon, we have 4 isolated communities: Old Crow, Beaver Creek, Burwash, and Watson Lake. So they have diesel generators serving them right now, and any of the folks here from those communities have heard that power plant for many years. Old Crow was our first project that we worked with the Vuntakwichin. They put a solar field in. It is their solar field. We buy the power from them. That is offsetting 25% of the diesel in that community now. So 25% reduction just on that project. The remaining communities, isolated communities, we are working with White River First Nation, Kluwani First Nation, and the Casca, or Liard First Nation. First Casca is their DevCorp that they're using. And yeah, they have similar projects, renewable projects that are going to reduce diesel by 25 to 30%. So they're already in motion. They're already being done. They're looking to be in service within the year or two. So feeling quite positive about those communities for sure.
Very similar to internet, redundancy is very important, obviously, to stay connected. And then when the power goes out in small communities, and regardless, even in Whitehorse, there's been many discussion of us connecting to the south. And I know as far as Teslin, that is the end of the three-phase power, if you will. What would be some of the benefits of us connecting not only to northern British Columbia and to the main line that would not only provide Yukoners that sense of sustainability, but let alone the opportunity maybe for us as First Nations to invest as well?
You mean connecting into the North American grid?
That's correct. Sorry.
Yeah, that is a big project. So I know discussions have been ongoing for quite a while. They kicked up again just recently. So there is the ability to build transmission lines that connect us into northern BC. It is a nation-building project to do it, though. Like, it is billions, a couple $2 billion at minimum. To get there. The interesting thing for me when I think about that, we could connect in to the North American grid, really provide that next source of generation that I was talking about, that next source of power that we do need. But there's always, we're at the end of the line in the Yukon. We're in the far northwest corner of Canada. So if anything happens with that power line, like the weather events that happen, or there's a forest fire and they need to shut it off, we'll be on our own again. Mm-hmm. So, no different than Teslin. Really, so the communities, a lot of the communities like Teslin have a standby generator in the community. So that was there from originally when there was a power plant that served the community. Then in 1985, the power line was built from Whitehorse to Teslin, and that power plant was shut down from running all the time to just being called on when the line goes down. It still runs every year because that line eventually goes down. So even with that transmission line connecting us into the grid, we're going to have to consider that when we look into that project.
For sure. And if you're just tuning into Shone FM or Facebook Live, you're listening to the 50th annual Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow speaker series. And we have Jay Massie, a member of the Taon Council, live on the comfy couch. So I just want to shift gears a little bit in regards to your own personal beliefs. We're celebrating 50 years of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow. How important and significant is this document, not only to you, but to the next generation of not only Yukoners, but First Nation citizens as well?
Yeah, it's again, when I started reading it again just recently, preparing for this speaker series, and just today looking around at so many of the elders that were a part of that, and how, just for me, how forward-looking that document was back in 1973, and really set us on that path to where we are today. And I keep thinking the Yukon really is a leader in Canada for self-government and these final agreements, 11 of our 14 First Nations, which is, what are there, 20 some odd of these agreements in Canada?
27, yes.
Yeah, 27, and we have 11 of them here. So it is quite amazing to me how 50 years ago, the leaders then are still the leaders now.
And even from your global perspective of having been able to travel the north and go to different jurisdictions such as Nunavut and NWT, let alone in Alberta, how far more are we advanced in the political discussions and the representation of First Nation governments in our reality versus other jurisdictions?
Now you're trying to get me in trouble. Yeah, I still got to work over there.
That's
too.
right.
Yeah, we from the jurisdictions I see, we are well advanced. Just having those government to government conversations. I understand there's still work to do. We could still be better at it. But there are jurisdictions that government to government conversation doesn't happen. The relationship just isn't as well established as it is here. So yeah, we're absolutely leaders on that front too.
For sure. And we talked a lot about economic reconciliation this morning. As a company, I know that you've made some partnerships across the north, and recently you just talked about the partnership with Vantakuchin. What is the possibilities for more partnerships as ATCO not only develops and changes some of the game plan as they move into different sources of energy? How important is that relationship and that partnership with First Nation governments today?
For us as a business?
Yes, and just based on other examples in NWT or as mentioned with the Vantakuchin, how important are those opportunities?
I see what you're doing.
Yeah, we're coming full circle, my friend.
I see what you're doing. I'm catching on. Terribly important. So again, we're ATCO as a group is committed to the economic reconciliation. What Peter's alluding to is earlier or this time last year we have a partnership in the NWT and our power company there with the Denendeh. That partnership has been in place since the 80s, and last year they are our 50-50 partner. In the utility over there, so they are part of our company over there, or we're 50-50. So we run it together. It's a power company, no different than here. So that's something that I think is completely possible in other jurisdictions, including the Yukon.
For sure. And I look at the crown corporations or the bigger corporations that are operating in the north. How important is it for us to have our voice? And sure, your company may set the goals and objectives that they want to see 15% of Aboriginal or Indigenous people working for the company. Do you, as in your role, have that ability now to feed back into the goals and objectives, let alone the strategic planning processes of companies such as ATCO, to not only influence them, but also talk about the trials and tribulations that our people have faced, right? Where we come from, low education, the low opportunities for our people. Do you have that ability now in your role to influence your company in regards to setting those benchmarks that are not only realistic, but also that are going to benefit the next generation?
I've been quite fortunate in having that opportunity to steer and give a little bit of a direction. It's definitely just not me. It is a team effort. For the company, what we have done, one of the things that we think is terribly important is the education part of our employees, of our company, including me. So we have a couple thousand employees in Canada. Everybody does the Indigenous awareness training when they come on board, and we have a number of different courses that folks take when they're employed with us and when they're working in these communities. One of the more important ones that I've seen taken or that we've committed to and we've been a part of is just the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada. That's a pretty important core. It's the whole history of the last couple hundred years, and it's not it's a bit of a dark story, right? Like we were talking, we were never taught that in school.
That's right.
In high school. But what it has done for us, and I've seen the change in the people that I work with, right? When they go through that tough story and through that training, people break down. It's a tough go sometimes, but it also levels a little bit of their expectations of working with Indigenous peoples and governments in Canada. And like you said, all those things where we're overrepresented in the justice system, in the welfare system, and are underrepresented in graduation rates, right? All those reasons those have been going on for a long time. There's a reason why it's like that. What I've seen is a change in my coworkers from taking that, just in understanding and having some empathy when we work as a business with the communities and Indigenous governments.
For sure. And you mentioned over 30 years in the company, and you'll be seeking Freedom 55 here shortly, my friend. How important is it to have introduction, or if you will, entry-level jobs into the company, not only to encourage, the ability to have a career in the company, but to encourage young First Nation people to join the company? What are you doing to provide that opportunity as well, or the platform for them to stand upon?
Yeah, it's so we have a couple programs. There's a successful one that we've been running in Alberta for a while that I'm looking at stealing or adopting, since it's working well. And it works with the high school students, gets them into the company, sees what we do. They get to see what we do. It's their introductory of what. As a power company, it's not always clear of what we're doing behind the scenes, so they get to see that. We started our partnership last year with the Warrior program along similar lines, right? Getting the Indigenous youth in, touring them through businesses, understanding what there are for careers here in the Yukon at home. So that's in high school, and then after that, we've got Indigenous student scholarships. We got Indigenous summer student programs where we're hiring the summer students, and then we have hiring programs after that. That again, I need to look at adopting a bit better here.
For sure. And in regards to your own personal support, what kept you motivated, if you will, other than the need for money, of course, but just even staying with the company? Because a lot of people, can say that they've been in a business or in the same company for over 30 years. Is there a moment or a person that inspired you to not only, stay committed, if you will, but also kept you insulated or supported wraparound services that allowed you to flourish in the role that you have today?
I don't know if there's a specific person as much as it was a team. First of all, I loved what I did, right? What I did. I did. I liked working on the power lines, building power lines, being out there, traveling, worked in every community in the Yukon, loved traveling around the Yukon. And yeah, love that a little bit better than the desk job nowadays. Yep. A little easier on the back now, though. But the team environment, I liked the work that I did, and I had a very good group of individuals that I worked with that they were committed to their jobs on doing a good, they were of the mindset of working hard, honest day's work. So they would get out there, put in that honest day's work, and that really appealed to me, and I was good with that. And really, over the career, I've been supported very well by ACO, ongoing training and mentoring and support that way. So it's worked out really well.
And very much so. You've now serving a term as a council member for the Quechan Council. How important is it for our younger generation now to see these opportunities and the roles to not only represent the government, but also to be a part of the government? How vital is that for our younger generation to see those opportunities and to see themselves possibly in roles such as yourself when it comes to the government?
Sitting on council?
Yes.
Yeah, it's terribly important to be involved with our First Nations and on council. I tend to think, on our council, it'd be great to have more youth in there. You get the full spectrum, right, of the elders, the folks like me that have a business background and can contribute that way, and then the youth, because they have a very different perspective than I have. That's for sure. And it's not, it's a valuable one. We can't lose track of it. So yeah, it's terribly important. I think it should almost be a mandatory high school course for them, right? The self-government agreements and how to be a counselor, how to give back to your nation. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be. But anyways, we'll refer to that to another discussion. But as we reflect on today being significant, February 14th, and the delivery of the document Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow, how much of that day has changed our relationship now as self-governing nations with land claim agreements? How much has that changed our relationship with Ottawa from a government-to-government perspective versus prior to the agreements?
Yeah, it's. I'm not as familiar with Ottawa as you are.
Yeah, fair enough. That's all right. But do you see that we get the recognition other than just being, on the CBC News for all the wrong reasons? We've now taken that important role when it comes to governing our people. How important is that relationship now, not only with the relationship with the Prime Minister, and we did have the pleasure of having him here earlier this week. Just have things changed, I guess, is probably the better question since those times.
I would say they've changed significantly. What I would say again is the Yukon being leaders at this, right? Like really to be held up as examples of regions and areas where this works. I know there's there's over 600 individual nations out there that have to work through their way forward to modern treaties. And it's difficult. It's a long road, but we can look at our region as a really good example of what can work. I think we have a good voice. You would know better, and the leaders in the room would know better than I. Have a good voice in Ottawa, a better voice in the Yukon, or a more prevalent voice, I should say that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's done very well.
And just to wrap things up, from your perspective, how has this document, the little golden book here, if you will, changed our lives, not only in the last 50 years, but what will it do for us in the next 50 years? To wrap things up.
Just an easy one.
Just an easy one.
You got any softballs you want to talk?
And for everybody, Jay and I went to high school and graduated together, so I've known him for a long time too as well. So,
yeah, really helpful.
I love you, brother.
So it's again. We've come a long way in the 50 years. There's still a lot of work to be done, and just recent items like the First Nation School Board that stood up. I think we are doing very well. I think we are on the right course. I think. The continued work with the Yukon government and the Canadian government will make things a little more clear for anybody that for everybody in the Yukon, I should say. It's not just the First Nations, right? This is for the benefit of all Yukoners. That's really how I look at it. Getting back our rightful spot in the economy and in the future of the Yukon.
For sure. And just want to thank you, Jay, for your time today. And I'm very proud of you as much as of anything in regards to not only your resilience, but also where you are today. And just want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us on the speaker series. So